What inspired Rohan? Rohan is a kingdom situated in the fictional land of Middle-earth, as imagined by J R R Tolkien for the famous stories of The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit and The Silmarillion, to name a few, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Now, Rohan is a kingdom situated to the north of Gondor. Its geography is mainly large open plains with waving meadows and grasslands, as well as certain pools and mountains to the south. And actually for this land, he created a people called the Rohirrim, who inhabited it. And actually, the Rohirrim have been based largely off real historical people and historical cultures. And it's that I want to take a look at in this video. What inspired these people and J R R Tolkien to write about these people in this land? Now, he was himself actually a professor at Oxford University. And he studied English, and he was a professor of English. And as part of that, he also studied Old English, the language of the Anglo-Saxons. And it's true that the Anglo-Saxons played a large part in inspiring the Rohirrim and the culture that he would write about living in Rohan. Now, first of all, the flag or the white horse banner of Rohan is very important, and it has a lot of symbolism and connections to real historical cultures and peoples. Now, it might have been inspired by the Uffington horse, which was built around 3,000 years ago in Oxfordshire, which was essentially a large white horse that was drawn onto the side of a mountainside by using various chalk and stone, things like that. And it's thought that this might have been the inspiration for the white horse on the green background. Now, lots of various Saxons and other Germanic peoples used the white horse as well, as are few examples from Germany, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands. In some cases, these horse symbols are thought to be related to legendary figures like Hengist and Horsa, or possibly the banner of the last famous Saxon king Widukind, who was killed during the Saxon Wars with Charlemagne. As well, these are seen throughout the Saxon areas of Germany and the Netherlands, and possibly even into Belgium, with these Saxon horse head gables that are seen on the houses that appear throughout these various regions, and again goes back to this reverence of the horse and the importance of the horse in this Saxon culture that you can still see today. Now, as well, it's possible that the reason that J R R Tolkien decided to give the Rohirrim such an important connection to the horse is that ultimately the Anglo-Saxons in England, who were defeated by the Normans largely thanks to the use of the Norman knights in battle, whereas if the Anglo-Saxons had had cavalry and more of a focus, they might have been able to hold their own against them. And so it's thought that J R R Tolkien gave the Rohirrim such a strong use of cavalry that they were like the Anglo-Saxons that never really found the horse to be that useful in battle. So in Middle-earth, in this fictional universe, the Rohirrim are essentially the Anglo-Saxons who have mastered cavalry and are able to hold their own against the other nations of the world. Now, there are some very interesting names as well. So the king Théoden is actually an Anglo-Saxon form of a name. Now, it actually means in Old English, Theoden was also a word, and it means something like leader, the theo part of the word coming from a very old Germanic word for people that can be seen in many other ways. And Théoden is very interesting in his own right, and really he is referred to often in the film as Théoden King, which is similar to renderings in Old English and Old Norse, where, for example, Alfred the Great is known as Alfred König. It's the other way around, the switch in name being much more like the old Germanic poetic meter. Now, as well, Théoden in his own right is a bit like the hero Beowulf. He's an elderly king. He's been known for heroic deeds in the past, and really he shouldn't be going out to fight, but he accepts from the start that by riding out, and that's one of the reasons why he's so hesitant to go out and to aid Gondor, is that he knows it'll be his last mission, but he accepts that it is his fate to go out and to die in battle, just as Beowulf does against the dragon. And there are many interesting similarities between the two characters there. Of course, we also have Éowyn, who is his daughter, the Eo part of her name meaning horse in Old English. Many of the characters of the Rohirrim are called after horses because, of course, they're such important, and Wyn meaning joy in Old English. So really the name, a compound name, means horse joy. Her cousin Éomer, his name also with the Eo, and then the famous part meaning mer, which is famous in Old English. Now as well, these horsemen obviously have lots of different names that are very similar to Old English, and actually the dialect of Old English that is sort of the base for Westron, as it's called, which is the kind of common language of Middle-earth as imagined by J R R Tolkien, is the Mercian dialect of Old English. So that's the dialect that was spoken in sort of the middle of England, the Midlands, and below the Humber estuary, that kind of area that was spoken there, and that's the basis for the language. And actually they refer to themselves as the Eorlingas. Now this ing ending is also very important. Of course, Beowulf is Beowulf of the Shieldings, and the ing connotes that it's part of a group of people. That's how they would refer to each other in the Germanic sense. So again, you have that connection to the Germanic peoples there. And also all of these other names, which you will notice, some of which are completely lifted out of sagas and stories, and others which have very Germanic sort of formulations with compounds, with the theo part and the win part being used in many of them. Now as well, Odorous is the name of the capital, and this is actually a straight lift out of Old English. Odorous actually means enclosures, probably because of its situation up on the mountain, enclosed within the palisade, or the enclosures around it for the royal stable. And actually, of course, the main feature of Odorous, which is really beautiful, is the main hall where the king resides. And this also has a name, the Meduseld. And this actually comes from the Old English medu for mead and zaal, which is related to the Dutch word zaal if you're interested. And this means hall, so the Meduseld is really the mead hall. Of course, the mead hall being a very important place in the Germanic world and where the heroic deeds are sung. And actually, I think it's in the extended edition where they're all drinking in the hall. Of course, they would all drink before they went out to battle. And again, you see this in heroic poetry like the Gododin, for example, where all the warriors feast before they head out. And in Beowulf, of course, Heorot is the name of the hall in Beowulf, and they all drink in there as well. That's a very warrior kind of thing, a very Germanic thing, and it's shown in the Rohan as well here. Of course, the hall is incredibly beautifully decorated and carved, and the entire aesthetic of Rohan really just looks incredibly Anglo-Saxon. It's thatched, and it's said to be like a golden hall. Like when you're approaching it, it looks golden. And inside are all the tapestries recounting and retelling the stories of Rohan of old, and of course the gods as well, looking very Anglo-Saxon in their aesthetic. Now they refer to themselves and to the area of Rohan as well as the Riddermark. And this is also very interesting because Riddere is Old English for knight. The word knight actually comes from the word for servant in English, from knecht, which is very similar to the Dutch word knecht, which actually means sort of like a servant, whereas Ridder, which is still the Dutch and German Ritter, are both the words for knight. Now the mark part of that comes from the borderland, or kind of a border area. So it's seen in Denmark is the border with the Danes, that kind of thing. You see that back in a lot of places. And in English, sometimes you see the area in England that's bordering Wales is known as the Welsh Marches. So it's come to march in English. But that's essentially why they are sometimes referred to as the Riders of the Mark. They are the borderland. And the reason they are the borderland in Lord of the Rings lore is because they were on the border of Gondor and they had an alliance with the Gondorians, and that's why they go and help them out with the charge at the Pelennor Fields when Gondor lights the beacons. They are the men on the fringes, on the border of Gondor, to keep them safe from the Easterlings to the east. The famous battle cry of the Rohirrim, which Theoden shouts before they charge into battle at the Pelennor Fields at the end of The Return of the King as well, also has its roots in Old English, in the Anglo-Saxon literature. And actually this is the text to The Wanderer, which is a very nice poem in Old English. Now take a look at the battle shout of the Rohirrim. It's incredibly similar, and actually it's just a more poeticized version of The Wanderer in Old English, with these themes of fate and destiny flowing through them, as well as the heroic deeds of the ancestors, as well as sort of looking at the noble attributes of their own people, again looking at the horse and things like this. Now really, the Rohirrim are in many ways another version of the Anglo-Saxons. It's almost as if they are the Anglo-Saxons had they not been conquered by the Normans at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Things like the cavalry, that obviously could have helped them to defeat the Normans, play a heavy role in the Rohirric culture there, as well as also having castles and moved on and advanced in certain areas. Of course, you have Helm's Deep or the Hornburg. The Anglo-Saxons never really built castles out of stone at all. They did build burhs, these wooden sort of fortifications and settlements, but they were never really more than shoring up old Roman defences or building their own wooden palisades, things like this. Although with the Rohirrim, they are almost as if they are the Anglo-Saxons moving into the real Middle Ages out of the early Middle Ages. And I think this is what J R R Tolkien really wanted to portray with this very interesting culture, which has always been one of my favourite in Middle-earth. So thank you very much for watching. This has been my video on the people of Rohan, the Rohirrim, and the nation itself, and sort of the inspiration behind it. Thank you very much for watching. I have really hoped that you have enjoyed watching this video about this very interesting culture that has been based on many sort of historical aspects of the Anglo-Saxons and the Old English language. Now, comment below what else you would like to see, sort of Middle-earth stuff, where the real history is behind it. I've got some ideas for a few more, but I'd be very interested to see your take. Now please do remember to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you're subscribed, remember to hit the bell notification, because I'm getting a lot of people saying that my uploads aren't showing up at all, so you'd really help me out by hitting the bell notification and by sharing it with your friends if you did enjoy it. So thank you very much for watching. I've been History with Hilbert, and I will see you all again very soon.